You reach a certain age, and something starts to crack. Not in the mirror, not in your knees, not even in your bank account, but in your soul. Everything that used to matter suddenly feels hollow. You've built a life, a name, a reputation. You've played the roles, the achiever, the provider, the partner, the parent. But now, something whispers, is this really it? You start to notice it in small moments. That dull silence in the room after the applause fades. That emptiness that creeps in even after you've won. That gnawing sense that the story you've been telling about yourself might no longer be true. It's not a breakdown, it's a summons. Carl Jung believed midlife is not a crisis in the negative sense. It's a turning point, a transition from the outer world to the inner world, from ego to essence, from image to authenticity. But here's the catch. Most people resist this call. They cling to their younger self like a fading photograph, fighting change, fearing obscurity, denying the unknown. And that resistance, that's where the real suffering begins. Because what's dying isn't you. It's the illusion of who you thought you had to be. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a deeper chapter, one that can't be written by ambition, titles, or applause. You are being asked to face yourself, to turn away from the noise of the world and toward the silence of your own soul. The question is, will you answer? Before we understand the crisis, we must understand the battlefield, because the war that begins in midlife is not out there in the world. It's happening inside you, in the architecture of your own mind. Carl Jung didn't see the human psyche as a simple thing. To him, it was a vast inner universe, layered, complex, alive. At the surface, you have the ego, the I you think you are, the part that answers to your name, that curates your social media, that builds a life, makes decisions, and walks around in the world saying, "This is me." But the ego is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that is the persona, your mask, the version of you that you show the world. It's polished, likable, strategic, the professional, the good parent, the reliable friend. But it's not the full truth. It's what you present to survive. And deeper still lies the shadow, the part of you you've hidden, rejected, repressed, your anger, your fear, your desires, your unlived dreams, your disappointments, all the things that didn't fit your image. But at the deepest core is the self, not your ego, not your image, but your entire potential, the full totality of who you are meant to become. Midlife begins when this inner structure starts to shift, when the ego can no longer carry the weight of the life it built, when the persona begins to feel like a prison, when the shadow starts leaking through in dreams, moods, outbursts, or silence. You start to feel haunted by what you've lost, by what you never dared to pursue, by the question you avoided for decades: who am I really without all this? It feels like things are falling apart. But Jung would say they're actually trying to reorganize, because the psyche doesn't want perfection. It wants wholeness. And the second half of life is about becoming whole. This is the inner terrain of the midlife turning point, a psychological rebirth, a summons to descend into yourself, not to destroy who you are, but to uncover who you've always been. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. At some point, the mask begins to crack. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you've outgrown it. You've spent your whole life perfecting your persona, that version of you that the world applauds, the dependable father, the tireless worker, the smiling spouse, the achiever, the giver, the good one. You wore it so long it started to feel like your skin, but deep down you knew it was just armor. And now, in midlife, the armor gets heavy, Not because the world changed, but because you did. You start to feel like you're performing a role in a play you didn't audition for anymore. You walk into rooms, speak to people, smile politely, but there's a ghost behind your eyes whispering, "I don't want to be this person anymore." Jung called this the collapse of the persona. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it happens slowly, like colors fading from a photograph. Other times it explodes in burnout, divorce, panic, or breakdown. It looks like a crisis, but really, it's a correction. Because if you keep living only for how you appear, you will eventually forget how it feels to be real. The persona is necessary in youth. It helps you navigate society, find your place, survive. But it was never meant to be your final form. If you don't shed it, it becomes a coffin. You'll start to feel like a stranger in your own life, surrounded by everything you once thought you wanted, but haunted by a feeling that none of it touches your soul anymore. And that's when something dangerous can happen. You may try to double down on the mask, buy more, work harder, distract yourself, or worse, blame others for the hollowness inside you. But none of that works, because the truth is, your soul is starving for authenticity. Jung believed this was the real threshold of midlife, the moment the persona fails, and you stand naked before yourself asking, "Who am I?" when no one's watching. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you're ready to find out. You've taken off the mask. Now, what stares back? Silence, emptiness, a room inside you that you've never dared to enter. This is where the shadow lives. Jung said the shadow is everything you've disowned. The parts of you were told were too much, not enough, unacceptable. Your rage, your fear, your ambition, your sadness, your vulnerability, your desire. Every part of you pushed into the dark just to be loved in the light. And in midlife, the shadow knocks, not to punish you, but to be acknowledged. You feel it in your restlessness, your irritability, your unexplained sadness, your sudden urges to destroy what you've built or run away from what you created. You might think you're falling apart. You're not. You're finally touching the parts of yourself you've avoided your whole life. This descent isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough, but it doesn't come gently. You will grieve. You'll grieve the dreams you buried, the person you pretended to be, the years spent chasing applause while your soul whispered, "This isn't it." And most painfully, you'll grieve the version of yourself you thought was real. Because to meet the shadow, you must be willing to look at your life with terrifying honesty. Jung warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is why many people avoid the shadow. They numb it, project it onto others, turn it into judgment, blame their partner, their job, their past, because facing the shadow means admitting, there's a stranger living inside me, and it's me. But here's the truth Jung knew. The shadow isn't evil. It's not your enemy. It's your unlived life. And if you're brave enough to enter that darkness, you won't be destroyed. You'll be expanded. You'll find parts of yourself you forgot were there, creativity, depth, compassion, clarity. You'll reclaim energy you didn't know you were using just to keep things buried. And for the first time, you'll begin to feel whole. But that wholeness only begins when you stop running from the shadow and start listening to it. There comes a moment, after the fall, after the silence, after the shadow has been faced, where something quietly stirs within you, not the ego, not the mask, not the voice of society echoing in your head, but something older, wiser, and deeply you. This is the beginning of individuation, Jung's term for the journey of becoming your true self. It's not self-improvement. It's not about becoming better or successful in the eyes of the world. It's about becoming whole in the eyes of your soul. Up until now, you've been assembling a version of yourself that could function in the world. You've collected identities, achievements, habits, beliefs, like tools for survival. But individuation asks a different question. What remains? When you drop everything that isn't truly yours? It's not a linear path. It's not clean or glamorous. It looks like solitude, long walks, old journals, hard conversations, deep dreams that rattle your foundation. You start to feel drawn inward, to memories you forgot, to emotions you once suppressed, to longings that never left. You begin to piece together the real map, not the one you were handed, but the one that leads you back to yourself. Jung believed this process was sacred. He called it the restoration of the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the totality of who you are, both light and dark, conscious and unconscious. It requires courage, because you'll have to let some things die. Old roles, false identities, relationships built on performance instead of truth. And that death is painful. But on the other side is freedom. You'll begin to feel your center again, not the version of you that reacts to every expectation or fear, but the one that simply is, calm, grounded, rooted in something deeper than opinion, status, or age. In the stillness, you may realize you were never lost, you were simply buried, and now you're starting to return. This is individuation, not becoming someone new, but finally becoming someone real. In a culture obsessed with youth, aging feels like failure. Your reflection changes. Your name might not echo the way it used to. The applause fades, the race slows down, and yet, in the quiet of that slowing, something more profound begins. Jung believed the second half of life was not a descent into irrelevance, but a sacred turning inward. Not the end of your story, but the part where you finally begin to understand what it was all about. He wrote that the tasks of youth are expansion, building, striving, creating, but the tasks of midlife and beyond, integration, meaning, soul, because the first half of life is about success, but the second half is about significance. In youth, we chase the light of the world. In maturity, we are called to carry light into the darkness of confusion, loss, mortality, and mystery. This is when the deeper archetypes begin to stir: the wise old man, the crone, the hermit, the sage. They are not just symbols, they are parts of you, waiting to emerge once the noise quiets down. You may find yourself craving depth, longing to mentor, to create something lasting, to pass down stories instead of chasing headlines, to stop performing and start being. This shift doesn't mean becoming passive or fading into the background. It means stepping into your true power, the kind that doesn't shout, but radiates. Not the power to control others, but the power to know yourself fully and live from that truth. Aging reveals what was real and what was never yours. The friends who stay, the ideas that endure, the voice inside that grows quieter but more certain. You begin to see life not as a ladder to climb, but as a circle to return to. You were born whole. You became fragmented by survival, and now you are being called back to your center. This is not decay, this is alchemy. Jung believed that if we walk this path consciously, aging becomes a spiritual achievement, not a loss, but a harvest. So when the world tells you you're fading, remind yourself, you're ripening. So here you are, not at the beginning, not at the end, but standing in the middle of your life, where the path splits, the noise fades, and the truth finally catches up to you. You thought something was breaking down, but now you see, something is breaking open. Carl Jung never called it a crisis to frighten you. He called it a turning point, because it's the moment when you stop living the life you were assigned and start living the one that's authentically yours. You are not who you were 10 years ago, and you won't be the same 10 years from now. But what matters now is this. Will you go deeper? Will you stop chasing the empty highs of ego and begin listening to the quiet pull of your soul? Will you face the shadow, not as an enemy, but as an abandoned part of yourself begging to come home? Will you stop hiding behind your persona and begin speaking with your real voice, even if it shakes? This journey is not for everyone. Some people will spend the rest of their lives trying to get back to who they were. But you, if you're watching this, if something inside you stirred, you already know there's no going back. There's only forward, downward, inward. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole, to meet the truth of who you are, to live with meaning, to carry the light you've earned, not the light you borrowed. The midlife turning point is not the beginning of decline. It's the beginning of depth. You are not fading, you are emerging. So here's your challenge. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what in me is trying to be born? Let that question guide you, not to answers, but to truth. You've worn the mask, you've played the role, you've kept the world happy. Now it's time to come home to yourself.